Look at Josh climbing up this blank wall. There's like no grips. He's right above the sea and he's free soloing. This is the climb of the century, folks.
I think adventure today for a lot of people would not be an exciting, fun adventure for maybe explorers of the past, because people come away from their trips unscathed and they're like, yeah, we succeeded in climbing this mountain in our really technical gear and all went well, and it's great, but maybe doesn't produce as much of a story as when things are a little bit more unknown and you're not sure which way the trail goes, or like if people have gone up this side of the mountain before.
In March of 1971, Rod Harris, along with Ian and Peter Richards, became the first to successfully kayak across the Bass Strait from mainland Australia to Tasmania. While today we would use an array of GPS devices and locator beacons to minimize the risk of such a crossing, in 1971, Rod Harris simply told his mom that he was going to Tasmania, but he didn't tell her how.
Yeah, there's plenty of new routes to do.
Yeah.
We just picked off the sort of the most obvious.
Mm-hmm.
The idea to climb across Bass Strait came about early 2017. I was looking for a challenge or looking for a new adventure or something to sort of set myself on. So yeah, once I'd done a little bit of research, I found out that a group of climbers had been there climbing in 1990. We actually were lucky enough to meet with one of them, Michael Hampton.
Yeah, Bass Strait's a pretty cool place. We did 19 routes consisting of about 29 pitches.
Yeah.
And, then we did diving and a few little trips with the lighthouse keepers.
Essentially just found out that there was a lot of climbing potential out there. Some big granite sea cliffs, some really good rock out there as well from their accounts. You know, I thought, why not, try and put a team together so we could actually see if we could pull it off. It was pretty interesting how the team came together. I guess all 4 people from different parts of the world who only sort of knew each other, you know, through someone else in the team. It was definitely a little bit thought-provoking and kind of an interesting social experiment at the same time. Josh, what's wrong?
I love onions.
So I met Rachel on a climbing trip in Mount Arapiles in Australia.
So I saw this group of 3 very close to where I was camping and asked them if they needed another partner, and then
we'd climbed together for about a week, and I knew she was a kayak guide in Alaska, so she was sort of the first port of call for this expedition. And from there, it was just looking for other teammates. So Rachel knew Jamie.
Jamie and I have worked in the same town in Alaska for a few years for different kayaking companies.
I'd never been to Australia before, and I really only knew Rachel from guiding in Alaska.
The last spot was Josh.
There was a message on my phone from Stan.
I started to look through my friends who'd be keen and who were available to do the trip, and Josh basically said, if you want me to do the trip, or if you want me on the trip, I'll quit my job, I'll do whatever I need to do, I'm keen to come.
Yeah, I threw in the job and jumped in my car and drove to Victoria. So been unemployed for about 74 days or something now.
Then Josh was just a mystery to me.
The other girls I hadn't met at all. We finally met Jamie and Rachel when I drove down here to meet up with Stan. So basically about a month before the trip started was when I met the girls.
I thought, what better way to get to know people than committing to going climbing in the middle of the Bass Strait?
What better way to meet somebody than to decide paddle 325 kilometers with them. Yeah, and sleep in a 4-person tent. We are here.
We thought it was important, I guess, being in a remote environment to teach Jamie and Rachel about Australian bush tucker. Something that I guess we're known for is being able to forage and find food in various places. Food everywhere. Look, here's another one. Here's another sign. Super obvious if you know what you're looking for. And pretty much if you dig, there's, look at this. You couldn't get much easier than that. It's hot sauce. John the Juggler, here's it. That'd be awesome with dinner tonight. You can normally, you hear that? Did you hear that? Check this out, just under, yeah, you gotta be careful here too, because it might be, oh look at this, that's what I thought it was. Look at that. And that there is pretty much, that's pretty much good to eat. Look at this, straight from the wild. You can't buy that in a shop. It's that cool.
When the 1990 expedition with Michael Hampton went out to the Kent group, they chartered a boat to get out there. And nowadays it's pretty easy to access remote places, either by plane or boat or off-road vehicles.
The approach is a dying art. I don't know if it's really an art form, but it's something that I've sort of come in and out of. Like I definitely appreciate climbing crags or areas or adventures that are really easy to access, where you can pretty much get straight out of your car and be there. But I think so much adventure comes out of the approach and actually getting to a climbing area or getting to where you actually need to be.
So in the spirit of the approach, we decided that we should kayak 325 kilometers across the Bass Strait from mainland Australia to Tasmania so that we could go climbing in the Kent group.
The main sort of reaction that we get from people is just saying we're complete nutters. The Bass Strait is, the gnarliest stretch of water in Australia, and some ships go through there, massive freight ships that sink. So to go through there on a 7-metre kayak, I mean, it would probably sound a bit silly to most people.
So a cow warning for all Tasmanian coastal waters.
In just 4 days, we have witnessed extraordinary courage, strength, initiative and sadness. We've seen coordination at a level unprecedented in any other recent maritime operation in Australia, in conditions that can present themselves at any time of the year in these latitudes, but which materialised at this time.
An Air Force Orion joining the already crowded skies of search planes. And then
basically what happens is the whole Southern Ocean is like uninterrupted here, so you can go around the whole planet like uninterrupted between here, below South America, all the way back. And what that happens is, like, you've heard of the roaring 40s, so those winds which are like down here keep circulating and circulating and circulating. Once one of these cold fronts punches up, it brings air from that latitude upwards. And the problem is that the Bass Strait in here is actually really shallow, so relative to like the Southern Ocean and all that. It's really, really shallow, so from a swell perspective and a wave perspective, it like brings up all sorts of hectic waves. So in reality, it shouldn't be as, gnarly as it is, but because of that fact that there's nothing to the west of it, and then it just gets really shallow, you get really, really bad waves, really, really bad wind, basically focusing in on that little area. So the basic concept is be out of the water when this comes to town.
If we can pull this off, we'll be the first ever kayak and climb across the Bass Strait.
Can you even breathe?
I'm just having too good of a time watching it. What is this?
It's classic.
Alright, so game plan. We'll head from Port Welshpool down Wilson's Prom into Refuge Cove, wait for a good weather window, and then we'll cross over to Hogan Island. After that, we'll cross over to the Kent Group, where we'll be rock climbing on some granite sea cliffs for about 2 to 3 weeks. And then it's our longest crossing all the way to Flinders Island. We'll make our way down the coast of Flinders Island, resupply in Whitemark, and then it's the notorious Bass Strait to Little Musselrow Bay, Tasmania.
Worst thing that happens, one of you capsizes, send a flare up, I'll see it, I'm fucking sick, I'll just windsurf out there and pick you guys up.
Let's do it. You want to learn about meteorology? I'd love to.
Okay, let's do this. You guys want to learn about meteors? Let's learn about meteors. Now, the main cause for the high waves in the Bass Strait are due to actually meteor impacts would happen surprisingly regularly in the South Pacific. Yeah.
We arranged for sailing and climbing enthusiast Simon Murray to help us out and do a food drop for us on Deal Island. But because the weather in the Bass Strait is so hectic, it could take us 2 days to get there, or it could take us 2 weeks to get there. So we had to make sure that we brought enough food to be able to get to our food drop.
Today's the day that we shop for 14 days worth of food so we can embark on this mission.
We're bringing along this one tube because we're going to force ourselves to maybe enjoy it. But if we don't enjoy it, there's only this one tube, and then we'll just force feed it to the guys.
Acquired taste inbound.
You're a great chef.
It's so weird. It's like, reminds me of a tire.
We can fit one more in.
Yeah, good. Oh, good one. T minus 1.
What day is it?
Now our mission is to get all these things inside of this vehicle and ourselves. There's a lot of things.
I think we got room for like 2 more giraffes, 1 portaledge, a couple of koalas. We're also turning into vampires. No more light.
I'm in a bit of a predicament. I don't have a very good foothold.
Yeah, look at that foothold. Look at that toe string. There's some pretty good toe string. What's our next mission?
Paddle. It's paddle day. Tomorrow.
What is it called?
Gotta go, Big Josh. It's time to get up and go back across the Bass Strait!
Today is the day. We've been planning over 8 months for this now, and it's finally here. And yeah, last night we stayed at a wonderful quail farm with 40,000 quails and slept maybe about 4 hours in preparation for this. A good 5 a.m. wake up, drive to the beach here in Port Welshpool, and now we just loaded the kayaks for the first time with all of our food. Recently bought food. Turns out our eyes are bigger than our hatches. So today we're going to paddle to Refuge Cove because we have a really good weather window tomorrow. Sea conditions are good, swells are pretty low, wind very calm for the Bass Strait, so we'd like to push out to Hogan Island then, but we'll just see how we go today because as you can see it's a little bit windy right now. So good first day, 40 kilometers of paddling. The heaviest our boats are going to be. We're all fresh, at least, and we got a headwind.
Raindrops keep falling on my head, just like the guys whose feet are too big for his bed. Nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head. They keep falling.
Something that we took with us on the trip, you know, Josh and I had been working on it for a while, was the outdoor clothes dryer.
Double dry.
Really just working on our drying effect.
Double dry. Spin.
Wait.
Double. Blow dry. Blow, tumble and spin all at the same time.
It just accelerates the drying process of drying clothes.
That's dry.
It's good. Sweet. Nice. Ready to go.
Everyone keeps talking about the rock. I don't know what that means, but apparently we're looking for him. Is Dwayne on the islands? I'm not sure.
Going across the Hogan Island, we woke up very early in the morning. We paddled out of where we were staying near Refuge Cove and around the corner and started aiming towards the horizon, which for me was when the trip really kicked into gear. It was, you know, paddling off towards the unknown, just following a bearing.
To Hogan we go.
So that was pretty exciting, and you know, we paddled off, and we picked this day specifically because the weather was supposed to be the best, and you know, the winds were going to be low, the sea was going to be calm, and I don't think anyone was really prepared for the conditions that we actually had. Like, it was very, very, very calm. It was almost like paddling out on a lake. Like, we would sort of paddle for 29 minutes at a time, and then we'd rest for 60 seconds, and every 2 hours we would come together for a 5 or 10 minute break.
Yeah, only the best conditions we've ever had.
And during one of those 5 or 10 minute breaks, I jumped out for a swim, had a little paddle around and a toilet stop, and we paddled on. And then the next one, Jamie decided to jump out, and I mean, it was so calm, she took her life jacket off and swam underneath the kayaks, and it was a pretty spectacular day out there.
Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turned to red. Crying not for me, 'cause I'm never gonna stop the rain, 'cause complaining, because
We came around to the eastern side of Hogan, where it sort of rolls into this nice little beautiful bay, and the water turns like a turquoise blue, and the beaches that we landed on were nice and white sand, and it's just a really nice environment. So we sort of paddled in and navigated a few rocks with the help of Rachel, and once we pulled up on the beach, we were just like, well, we're still well ahead of schedule for the day, and the weather for the day is supposed to be really nice. We'll just take a bit of personal time to go out and, you know, do what you want to do, relax, unwind from the paddle that we just did. And I don't really know what happened, but for some reason we all had exactly the same idea, which was take all of our clothes off and go swimming. I mean, what else do you do on a secluded island when you're the only 4 people there, right? Like, I mean, island life kicks in and the clothes come off, so it's perfect. Like, we were on the island for about 24 hours, so this was now sort of mid-afternoon the next day, and the wind had picked up enough that we had to take our tent down, put it inside, and we knew there was some strong weather coming, but it wasn't supposed to sort of peak until the middle of next day. It was getting pretty strong already, so we decided to hunker down in the little tin hut that's there on Hogan Island and just sort of hide from the wind for a little bit.
The NAR has started!
yeah, the next day we poked our heads out and there was sort of a mini tornado going through and giant whirlies going across the water, sucking up a bit of water, and the winds gusted up to I think around 65 knots consistent for an hour, and we had gusts around 81 knots, so about 156 kilometres of wind. So.
And it seemed that the longer we were on Hogan Island, the weirder things got. I mean, when you're stuck on a tiny island for 4 days, you have to find some ways to entertain yourself.
And here he's down in his bed, hitting rocks against things. I don't know if I should tell him that fire has already been discovered.
What's going on? What the? What are you doing? What are you thinking? Oh, wow. Over here.
Isn't it like a laundry?
Yeah.
I can't tell if I can see.
Yeah! First time wearing the crack gloves. The TC Pros. And the first time on rock since leaving Victoria. Weather days don't suck.
The first fish that we got on the trip was just, it was almost like realising a dream, and just knowing that, you know, we could go out and we could fish for ourselves, and that was just another, you know, way that we could sustain life on this expedition, because you can only take so much in a kayak. You don't necessarily know how long you're going to be in a particular spot for. So it was definitely rewarding and comforting and fulfilling, knowing that we'd be fine fishing.
As once described by quite a comical gentleman, if you can't catch a fish on this island, you're a bit of a numpty. Today we did have a little mishap. I threw my line in, hooked a big one. This thing was huge. Snapped me rod in half. Half my rod went this way, half went that way. And then not long after he broke the line, the cheeky bugger. Anyway, after some rod repairs, she's back in action, half the size, but I mean, there's that many fish here, it still works, you know?
What's got there on the ground next to you?
Some people would call it a pebble. I would call it a rock. Does it float? I don't know. These are questions we wonder every day. And I think that's part of what keeps us going, is the quest, the journey, to try and figure out what this actually is. And they're just fish. We've some ingredients so we can make.
When you're looking at the Bass Strait as a whole, the islands are just these tiny dots. I didn't expect there to be much rubbish on the islands at all.
Alright, so we're on Hogan Island, and yesterday Rachel went for a mission to pick up some debris hiding in the rocks. Got all this plastic hiding out. What kind of stuff we got in there, Rachel?
Oh, a bit of styrofoam. Looks like some old filter parts from boats. Several water bottles. Just like various plastic. Lots of rope. Pretty sad.
So what would you say to someone who thinks that their one time using a plastic bottle doesn't matter?
I would say consider what happens to it after you use it. And that should go for probably everything you purchase every single day. 'Cause it's really easy to not think about where stuff ends up.
I think overall that people have good intentions and do care, but it's not something that's on their radar. Like, we have so much on our minds in today's society, and when we go to buy something at the grocery store, we're thinking about work or our friendships or relationships, things like that, and we're not thinking about each item that we buy, what's going to happen to it when we're finished with it. And I think just like bringing that mindfulness to what you're doing and what you're using and those habits would make a big difference.
We're pretty far from the mainland of Australia, and also there's just really insane currents that rip through here, so it's pretty surprising that it would end up on the beach or in the rocks. So it just makes you wonder how much is just passing by the island and not getting swept up and just exposed for animals living in the ocean.
On this expedition, we collected microplastic samples from the beaches to give to Tangaroa Blue, an organization dedicated to removing rubbish already in the environment, stopping the flow into the ocean, and reducing waste production.
Microplastics are plastics that have begun the process of degradation in the environment. So typically they're angulated, sharp, small pieces. In this process of breaking down, because plastics don't really completely biodegrade ever, they get to this point of microplastics, and then it's easier for animals to ingest them and that to be carried down the food chain.
On backpacking trips and expeditions like this, we bring along our own spoons and bowls and cups and water bottles and whatever else we need. So why shouldn't we in everyday life? And I think that if you spend a lot of time in the outdoors and you appreciate and recognize the beauty of these spaces and the importance to keep them healthy and functional, then I think that we have a responsibility to transfer that feeling and that knowledge to the rest of society and encourage people to, reduce their waste. It's always convenient to just use single-use items, but if collectively we decide that we don't want to be trashing our planet anymore, then I think that we can make a huge impact.
Boom.
Nick says, sorry for the delayed forecast. Windsurfing. You know how it is. See you tomorrow. Thanks, Nick. Nick meteorologist over and out. Man, Jamie does all the paddling.
As we got to the Kent group of islands, we were paddling next to these massive 100-meter granite sea cliffs that Michael Hampton had described to us. But seeing them in person from our tiny little kayaks was so surreal. And it was a pretty special feeling knowing that we got there by our own human power.
Yeah, we made it today! Have you found the rock?
No, we're still looking. He's very elusive for such a big human. We've looked everywhere, and I think he's going to be... Josh has already got a head start, but we think he's on the other side. We have reason to believe that the rock is hiding somewhere over there.
Yeah, I can't wait to get his autograph.
Yeah, me too.
If you could describe your mood in a sound, what would the sound be?
I have these moments of deja vu like every day, where I'm just like, whoa. It feels like I've been here before, but at the same time, it's just like, yeah, it's crazy. It's like I'm living in a dream.
Let's do it. Let's get on some rock.
It was a beautiful feeling standing on top of the cliff and, you know, connecting into the rap line and abseiling about 80 metres down a sea cliff in the middle of the Bass Strait was pretty special.
Started from the top, now we're here. I had this weird dream last night that we paddled a few hundred k's just to go climbing, and it just didn't seem to make any sense.
Until right now.
Well, that's what I mean. Maybe that wasn't a dream and it actually happened.
And we are actually
wherever I am, I'm happy to be here.
Right.
Check out this.
Oh damn,
Yeah,
girl.
That is one bad ass woman. What you doing there?
Cleaning the anchor.
Oh, is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Rachel eventually, after sort of checking out the cliff and the line and sort of climbing around a little bit to find where the best path would be, found a wicked little path up through a big bushy ledge and around an arete and up over to a beautiful belay ledge. And I went up second and just sort of cruised up and got to belay ledge with her, and it was pretty freaking awesome. It was like, you know, the first climb of the trip. It was a really good feeling once we got onto that belay ledge. You know, had a hug and a high five, and then belayed Stan up, who he came up cleaning all the gear, and then led the second pitch, which was just a nice little scramble over a few boulders, I guess, and back to the top of the cliff. So it was pretty wicked, but we decided because Rachel led off the first pitch, she could name it, and she named it R&R, which was pretty fitting, I think. Like, we're all out there for just a bit of, you know, rest and relaxation.
This is the Donkey Kong dance.
If happiness could be described by movement, it would be that. Rachel looks cool all the time.
Yeah, she really does. Everything she does is just cool.
Oh, it's magic.
Wow, there's not a knot in the end. How easy.
It's because I untied it.
Actually, that's brilliant.
Thank you.
The sunny side we also made you. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side alive. It will help us every day. It will brighten all our way. If we keep on the sunny side alive. The storm and its fury broke today, crushing hope that we cherish so dear. Clouds and storms will at times pass away. The sun again will shine bright and clear. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side.
We knew we were going to be in for a pretty long day of climbing, so we started pretty early and we made it to the top of the cliff that we wanted to drop into just as the sun was coming up. So we were finding the best spot for an anchor, which had some challenges in its own respect. But one of the restrictions that we kind of put on ourselves, a limiting factor, was that we only had a set of half ropes. So really it made the most sense to have like a party of two climbing and then wait, and then like another party of two climbing. But it just didn't feel right not having the whole team climbing together, and it was a bit of a challenge because not everybody's on the same level climbing wise.
Our mission today is to go down there to the water and then to come back up here. All together as a team.
We were a team out there, and so we wanted to have everybody complete something together, and ideally from the ground up. So getting lowered all the way to the ocean and then having the unknown of having to find our way out.
Jamie's abseiled a grand total of, I don't know, somewhere between 0 and 5 times, and she's doing really well. This is 100 meters of rope and 100 meters of air below her. Oh, there was 100 meters of air below her, and yeah, she's learning on the go. She's crushing it. Yeah, girl. Yeah, Jamie, nice.
Yeah. Stan started leading up, and everybody followed him up this first pitch. That was pretty cool. Like, you can hear the ocean right below you, the waves lapping up onto the rock, and smell the salt and the fish in the air.
Rachel's checking her teeth because she forgot to brush them this morning. Yesterday we washed a couple shirts.
And Jamie washed her hair and armpits.
Yeah, I did. Look at how clean they are.
But then it got pretty exciting because it was just route finding, and I remember working a lot, or like communicating a lot with Stan specifically, trying to figure out what would be the best for the team and which way we should go. So sometimes having to break the route up into shorter pitches and bring people up and then decide as a group, like, do we want to go this way or do we want to go this way? Because none of us knew what was to come next.
It looks like it's just full of jugs like those other cracks. Timing!
Nice one.
The climb that all four of us did together was probably one of my favorite days of the trip. I've mostly lived in places where outdoor climbing isn't very accessible and it's not very common. So I was definitely the least experienced on the team in terms of outdoor climbing.
The fact that Jamie climbed like 8th time outdoors.
First multi-pitch, 6 pitches. First crack climb.
Second time lead belaying. First time on a half rope. She'd never even seen half ropes.
But the cool thing about the outdoor community is that everyone is always learning and always teaching. Anyone can go and do these kind of things. You just have to be willing to learn, willing to step outside of your comfort zone, and willing to accept the fact that you're probably going to be terrible when you first start out.
Rachel's teaching me how to build an anchor today, and then we're gonna send, what was the name of our route gonna be?
Braless Babes Battle the Bulls.
You don't have to be the strongest climber or the fastest hiker or the most intense skier to get out there and have fun.
Hello.
You'll soon realize that there's always people who have your back and want to encourage you and see you get better.
So the big red cliffs is one of the areas, probably the best area that we climbed that Michael Hampton had established. There was a few known sort of climbs there that we wanted to check out, as well as definitely potential for just lots and lots more. Like, it's just crazy rock there, but I guess it sort of gets its name from, you know, for me anyway, from when the sunset hits it perfectly. The cliffs just right up like bright red, so they're a pretty beautiful area and some pretty big cliffs with some pretty awesome features.
Part of the objective for this trip overall was to repeat some of the climbs that Michael Hampton and his group had put up in the 90s, which that was easy to do because once we got to the cliffs, the same lines that inspired them inspired us. So Jamie and I went and did a route called Crystal Voyager, which is 3-pitch 16, and we decided to do it as a female team.
So here we are, traversing along the Crystal Voyager. There's Rachel. Here's me. This is the first climb of the trip that we've done that has already been climbed and established.
Josh, what are you doing?
Being safe.
How?
Because I have my strap on.
You have your strap on?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Safety first.
What'd you find, Jamie?
Rock!
Did you find the rock?
No, not the rock, but...
Rachel asked me to pass her the nut tool.
I meant the peanut butter tool.
Multifunctional. For all types of nuts.
Point of no return.
What do you mean? I could return if I want to. I will return. It'll just take me about 3 hours. We got on a climb called Flaking Out, and that was pretty spectacular. That, I think, for me was when the climbing on the trip really kicked into gear. I got to lead off the first pitch, and it was sort of a fun little corner, and then that led into, like, you know, really sort of delicate traverse, and then up over a bulge to a big belay ledge, and I brought Stan up, and then the guide had sort of said, like, you know, just make your way up to the big underhanging roof. It didn't really give a specific direction or anything.
Yeah, buddy.
Stan got to lead that pitch, and he sort of cruised up through some more very delicate bouncy moves and some pretty sketchy little areas with some run outs and some questionable gear placements.
That moment when you're on the side of a sea cliff and there's just a blank wall. You got it, Stan. You can do it. There's nothing there.
But eventually Stan stepped out onto non-existent footholds and reached out for this little crimp that he managed to get a hold of.
Got it. Hey. Yeah. Woo.
Get in the crack! Nice, bro.
We got up onto the big overhanging roof where the belay was, and it was my turn to lead again, and the climb was graded at about an 18.
Josh, how you going?
What's going on, mate?
So what's happening?
We've reached the crux pitch of this Flaking Out climb, which to that point would have been the hardest grade trad climb that I'd climbed, especially leading. So that was pretty exciting. I got to sort of work my way out from under this big lip and follow this crack sequence that sort of ran diagonally up, and to this point where you sort of had to do this very delicate balance move. You know, it was really cool to see these, you know, route descriptions that were written, you know, what is it, like 28 years ago or something now, and
you know, it's like, wow, like it's actually still pretty much exactly the same way he wrote it. Like he wrote, you know, on the first belay ledge there was this giant loose boulder, and that's exactly what I found. I was like, oh look, it's still here, you know, 20 something years later. Like there was the potential that we are the first people to repeat these routes, and you know, like they were set in the 1990s, and you know, not many people that we can find have been there since to climb in this area. And
there's a wild rhino!
You know, pulling through that area and up the final pitch and belaying stand up was just such a rewarding feeling. Like it was like, you know, to be out here and to be just outside of your comfort zone a little bit, and it was just, yeah, I mean, the adrenaline rush was pretty high.
How it makes you feel? So yesterday at low tide, I walked over to what's referred to as the Swashway, and that's the little land bridge between Erith Island and Dover Island. And I went at very, very low tide, and I was looking for really cool octopus eggshells. They're kind of like papery and really beautiful, like nautilus shell-esque. But then I just kept finding a bunch of trash. So I collected some microplastics.
So one day Josh and I went on a recce mission. It was just after we got to Erith Island, and basically the mission was to go around the rock shelf at low tide, find the base of Deepwater Cove cliffs, and then find a way to the top of the cliffs so we could start making a path back to camp. We found our way around to Deepwater Cove cliffs fine. What's going on? What's going through your mind?
Too much stoke right now.
Yeah. Whoa. Whoa. This is insane. There's so many lines. And then finding a way to the top of the cliffs. We started to look at a few different options, and I think Josh went around one way at one point, and I decided, oh, that looks pretty good. We'll go up here. So I start climbing up. I get, you know, pretty high up, and and I don't see Josh anywhere.
I'd found a way to continue along the cliffs down into the next gully and potentially walk up into like a knife safe area, and then see if we can make a path back down to camp to see if that was going to be quicker. And I'd climbed up and over, and I was like, where's Stan? You know, I can't even hear him anymore.
I've lost Josh.
I go back around the corner and I hear this, Josh! I'm looking around, just going, where did that come from? You know, it's bounced off about 6 walls. And
oh, here he is. Yo! Can you see me?
Look up, and there's this little stand head sticking out behind a tree, and I'm like, oh, okay, there he is. Like, so I just start scrambling up towards him, and just sort of thinking, like, why the bloody hell is he up here? You know, he must have found something good, otherwise there'd be no reason.
Hey, what's going on here, Stan?
Tree climbing, mixed with grass climbing and the odd bit of loose rock.
Right, why are we up here?
He's like, well, I climbed up here and then I didn't want to climb down. So it's like, now we're both stuck up here, mate. You know what I mean? Like,
why are we up here? Because I took us up this way and it's a bit sketchy to go back down the way we came.
Yeah, right.
This is fine. This is exciting. I love bush climbing. So if that loose rock that you're standing on now, if that goes, I'll probably go as well, I reckon. I think there's a bunch of it chocked up here.
Anyway, this is what's known as Bass Strait bush climbing.
Look, this is why we do this, really. This is why this whole trip, this is what this whole trip comes down to.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but this is why I paddled 200k.
It's all about the approach. Rock climbing is what we're approaching, and approaching is why we're doing it. For the lost art of the approach, this is it. This is the first step. This is a little turd in a big sewer. This is a drop in the ocean. This is the beginning of the approach movement. Climbing, if climbing didn't exist, then we'd have nothing to approach. So, and the good thing about a recce mission like that is that it's a reconnaissance. You're exploring somewhere that you haven't really been before, and we're exploring a place that I guess not a huge amount of people have accessed. You know, there's nothing better than being out on a mission where you're exploring or experience something new, or you've got these little challenges and you've got, you know, your good mates or some friends out around you to share it with. So it was a day that the four of us went over the top for top access to Deepwater Cove Cliffs. The plan was to basically spend the afternoon there climbing, trying to establish a new line.
We had a little bit of a slow start that morning, but were able to follow the trail that the guys had kind of like made into the bush, whacked in there. Stan and I decided to climb something that had been climbed before. We were going to try to climb a different side of it and get up to this little pinnacle, because it's really inspiring to be on top of little summits like that.
I wish you all the best of your future endeavours, and I will be seeing you shortly.
Okay.
Stay away from the stinging nettle.
Oh gosh. I led the first pitch, which was a bit more crumbly rock than I anticipated. I kind of didn't trust any of the gear placement on it. But then the further up we went on the route, the better the rock got.
Then Stan led the second pitch, which went into this cool little overhanging roof ledge.
And then we ended up on the northern side of the tower. And at this point, Jamie and Josh are hanging out below, being the support team.
Just sort of taking some photography and shooting some videos and dancing and singing, and I got my hair braided. And
this third pitch started to give Stan and I a little bit of trouble. He went up to lead it, and the beginning part is like a almost splitter crack, like a really beautiful crack line.
I think it was just the accumulation of you know, paddling for the last couple of days, the wrecking on the islands, the climbing. We're both pretty toast, and just spent ages trying to get up this next section.
He was like in the same exact spot for an hour, and you know, in my mind I'm kind of just thinking like, it's getting kind of late and they're like not making any progress, they should probably just come down.
We're both adamant, because we knew it was in our ability level to free climb it and climb through.
At this point, Jamie and Josh decided to cruise back to camp.
But yeah, it sort of got to about 4:30, 5 in the afternoon, and I yelled out to the guys that were still only about halfway up the cliff and just said, you know, we're going to go back to camp, because if we don't leave now, then we're not going to make it around the cliffs, and the water's going to come in too far to sort of have that as an escape route. And the only other way back was to jug up the 100 metres of static rope, which I was not really keen on doing. So we, me and Jamie packed up our gear and we hung around for probably another half an hour to see if these guys were going to make the climb and come down with us, but that didn't end up happening. So me and Jamie walked out at about 5:30.
We were kind of slingshotting, trying to get up this pitch, not thinking that the route was going to go on as far as it continued to do. And Stan and I were planning to get to the top of the tower, figure out a way to traverse over, and then walk down the bush back into camp.
Yeah, we got back to camp, but we didn't really know how long Rachel and Stan would be because we weren't able to make a plan with them.
And then we got everything out for dinner, and we sort of got that ready, knowing that Stan and Rachel would probably still be pretty far behind us as they're only halfway up the cliff.
We wanted to get onto the summit just to get to the top of this tower. And the reason we were climbing on this side of the cliff is because of the high gale warnings and heavy winds that were coming from the other side. But the position that we had climbed to continue on to get to the top of this tower, we were subjecting ourselves to the heavy winds and like the massive gusts coming through there. And it was starting to get dark at this point.
We didn't start cooking dinner until about 9:30, and then we ate dinner at about 10:30 at night.
And they still weren't back, and it was getting pretty late.
Then Jamie sort of started getting a bit worried, I guess. She was sort of, you know, what if something's happened?
Yeah, and then my mind started going towards everything that could have gone wrong. I mean, this is adventure climbing, and for all we know, a loose block of rock could have fallen off and taken them out.
And I was sort of just going it over in my head, just, you know, what's the worst case possible scenario, what's likely to have happened. And
there's no way to communicate with each other out there, so they didn't know what our situation was. We just hoped that they thought we would make the right call and not come out looking for us, because that would put them in danger.
Now I came to the conclusion that there wasn't really an easy way for me to get back around to the cliffs that night. I wasn't able to go around the sea cliffs, and I couldn't go back through the bush because there was no marked path. It was just bush bash there. It was quite hard to follow even in the daylight, so I decided that the best thing to do would be to leave them for the night, and I would hike out the first light the next morning if they weren't back.
We can continue on, subject ourselves to wind, to darkness, to a lot of unknowns of trying to get out of this. Or we know how to bail, we can leave some gear behind. So that just, it seemed like the smartest option at the time was to head back down.
So we had to go back over to our rope and jug out or extend the rope, 100 metres of rope to get out.
Just one puzzle at a time.
I waited at the top for Rachel, she came up, and then I think by that time it was midnight.
Sweet, adventure's not over yet.
We gotta find our way out.
2 hours later, stumbled into camp. To a nice meal that Josh and Jamie had made.
I was so relieved when they came back. It was definitely a scary night.
It just emphasized the fact that these suboptimal situations can be a really big deal when you're on an expedition like this. We had to make sure that we were always communicating with each other and doing what was best for the team, which wasn't always easy.
Holy shit. On the next good weather window, we packed up and headed back to Deal Island. And it was cool because we got to paddle past all the climbs that we had done, and we went around the backside of Deal to Winter Cove because that would give us the best launching point for our longest crossing.
It felt strange to feel so anxious in a place as beautiful as Winter Cove. The days slowly slipped by as we waited for optimal weather conditions for our longest crossing, 67 kilometers to Flinders Island. The longer that we spent on the water, the more likely something could go wrong.
Like I was saying to Stan, this is where we could accidentally get caught out. Like, we've been pretty happy, very comfortable with food, but it's like this next week, okay, we're looking for the next weather window. What if it comes like this again? You know what I mean? It could be 2 weeks, it could be 3. It's like we need to be careful with our food. We've got resupply options at White Mark or even Killiecrankie if that's necessary. But yeah, I don't know, just being mindful of the fact that it's like, okay, we're on an island. The only way off this island if we don't paddle is a very expensive boat.
But I guess my biggest concern with the wind coming from the side is endurance and just ability to sit in the kayak for that long, because it is going to be pretty tippy and you're going to be worked a lot, and that's just something that, like, if you're going straight into the same conditions, you just wouldn't have the same level of fatigue or accumulation of fatigue.
Yeah.
Wherever you like, don't lean on the tailgate, because we'll just go straight over there.
Oh mate, you're a legend. It's almost like you're waiting for.
Taking the safari through the Australian outback of Deal Island. What will we see today?
You're most likely to see a bunch of wallabies around.
Ready?
Oh, his birthday's it.
Someone's birthday. What do we say? Happy paddling to you. Happy paddling to you.
Hope a shark doesn't eat you.
Pretty much it's going to be a big day regardless, and I guess for tomorrow is just executing well and doing the little things right, just making sure that before we leave we've set ourselves up in our seats and we've lubed and had our quells, got all them easily accessible, and just make sure we've got enough water and snacks for the crossing.
We're paddling at 4:30, meaning we're gonna wake up at. We're waking up at 3 a.m. Woo-hoo.
Something that, you know, whilst you're doing it, you know, people talk about the sufferfest, or, you know, this sucks at the moment, but it's going to be so rewarding. And for me, I don't think I really had a time that was like that.
Leaving Deal Island after 2 weeks. On the water for about an hour now. First light coming up. Moon's still above us.
Probably the closest thing I had in the entire trip to hating it in the moment was after the 11-hour paddle. We paddled for about 10.5 hours. We got very close to the island we were about to stop on for the night, and you could see it right there in front of you, only about 200 meters away. And you know, we're just sort of like, oh yes, you beauty, we're almost done for the day. It's 66 k's down. You know, barely got a k to go, and all of a sudden we just sort of noticed that we're not really moving forwards anymore. It's like, what's going on here? And the tide had already switched, and you know, it took us half an hour of grueling paddling to get us into this island, where if we hadn't have done that, it was another 14 k's back to our campsite. So that last half an hour of, you know, 11 hours of already hard paddling was, it sucked. Like, it was definitely the point where I was just like, oh my god, I don't want to be doing this right now. But you know, again, met with a rewarding feeling of beating the tide and still pushing the kayaks into the island at the end of that afternoon.
I have an hour in water, transitioning land humans again.
Hey, nice to meet you. What's your name? I don't think I've seen you around here before.
Polly.
Polly. Hello, Polly.
That's pretty special.
There's a lot of special things about today's paddle.
Tell me about them.
Well, firstly, we've made wraps.
Ooh, tell me about your wraps.
Instead of eating pocket food.
Do they rhyme, or do they got some sick beats to it? Can you throw me the beat?
No, we've brought the beats. You wanted me to rap, right?
Yeah.
Oh, with some beats.
This is a chart topper, guys.
In the morning I'll be with you, but it'll be a different kind. I'll be holding all the tickets, and you'll be owning all the flights. Come on, skinny love, what happened here?
Jamie, she has an obsession with patting dogs. What are you doing?
I'm petting Rachel, our new dog. An expedition like this is pretty challenging, but I think the hardest part for me was not being able to see dogs the whole time.
It's been 9 days and 11 hours since we've seen a dog. But this wallaby is really close to a dog.
I wonder if he plays fetch.
Hey Maya, fetch. I'm thinking about it.
It's been, oh, what did I just add? 562 hours since I've seen a dog. I think that's the longest period of my life that I've gone without seeing a dog.
Oh, it's coming right at us. Oh my gosh.
The people of Flinders Island are known for being exceptionally kind, which was evidenced right away when we got there. People were just really eager to chat with us and invited us into their homes and taught us how to juggle. And that was kind of the theme of the whole expedition.
Yeah, I didn't realize how many people it took to make a paddle trip across the Bass Strait.
There was a lot of great people that let us explode our gear on their floors and use their cars or sleep on their floors and take showers, and helped us track down gear and information and whatever else.
Getting psyched on this idea that we were passionate about along with us, and they're part of the team.
And we're just really appreciative of everyone that was involved.
Butter factory, butter factory,
You told me once, dear, you'd never leave me, that no one else would come between. Now you're gone, and left lonely. You have broken all my dreams. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You never know how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Please don't take my sunshine away. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Do you want to see a boomerang?
Yeah.
I found one. It washed up here in a bit.
A boomerang, cool. I've always wanted to learn how to throw a boomerang.
So you want to hold it by the tip, and when you
Yep.
throw it, 45 degrees, you want to get some rotation. So what? Ready?
Mhm.
And then you wait for it to come back. Oh. See, it came back.
What's happened to her face? Oh, good, she's not getting any. No sunburn on her cheeks.
I'd love to. Okay, here we go. Hold on tight, buckle up. Alright, that'll be $3,000.
The warranty is no longer valid once you have left the premises.
So, what do you want to do today?
I was gonna go for a walk over there.
For the school run?
No, I did the school run. It's over there. Yeah.
The school run, you drop the kids off at
Parking getaway sticks on the beach. Dug a hole. Yeah, then we're gonna strap ourselves into these big fiberglass planks, I guess. Saddles, cradles. What else do you call them?
Kayaks.
Oh yeah, right, kayaks. Those things. And use our sticks to paddle ourselves across the old water there.
To propel ourselves.
Propel ourselves with sticks. Not very efficient.
Efficient.
And eventually we'll end up somewhere over there. I don't know, unknown land, yet to be conquered.
Can you see them yet? Where are they?
They just turned.
The arrival to Tasmania was a little anticlimactic because we didn't really know where to land. So we just kept walking around our kayaks through the water until we found a place that we could put them.
Where have you been?
Well, came from over that way, going over that way.
Right. Bit of a long walk to camp, is it? Welcome to Australia.
We made it. I don't know. I'm glad this isn't the job.
It could have been.
We made it to the right place.
Straight to the man.
This expedition was never really about the destination. Sure, when we arrived in Tasmania, we became the first people to ever kayak and climb across the Bass Strait. But it was about being out there with your friends, with 4 cool people, and doing this little social experiment and getting to access these really awesome places and just discovering what's out there and seeing what we were capable of. And I mean, a year ago, I didn't even know where the Bass Strait was, nonetheless ever think that I would kayak across it. Exploration has changed a little bit because it's definitely safer, and we have a ton more resources to be able to go after our goals and our missions with more confidence and more of a safety net. Exploration isn't dead, we just have to find new ways to do it. Stan had envisioned that when we arrived to Tasmania that there would just be a crew of people there and there would be someone with a boombox playing Down Under by Men at Work. So as soon as we got there, when we hopped in the car, that's exactly what we put on repeat about 5 times.
We just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich.
You better run, you gotta take cover.
Yeah.
Just hanging out at this beautiful beach, we have found rubbish, but not just rubbish. The ranger in charge, Wayne Dick's rubbish.
Got it on! What's this one? Sea-high veg! Look at that!
What a day!
Good.
What a catch!
We got 2 of these. They're just jumping on straight away, like within 5 minutes, 2 of these.
Well, my first reaction was one of, that's not very hardcore. Why don't you just paddle to Antarctica? Antarctica. That's next, right? I mean, surely this is just a warm-up for paddling to Antarctica. I mean, the Bass Strait, it's protected. You got Australia there, Tasmania there, New Zealand there. It's pretty weak, in my opinion. You know, why couldn't you choose something a little more ambitious? Jesus.